Vicky Godolphin, welcome to the studio this morning. You're Head of Customer Success for Qualtrics for Europe and, well, for EMEA. And you also head up the Dublin operation of Qualtrics here. And Qualtrics is a US-founded experience management company, and we'll come back to that. But just before I get into Qualtrics, we always like to, kick off our interview with our leaders by asking a little bit about how you got here, so your journey to here, and maybe a little bit about your background.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. And I'm really, really delighted to be here. I love this series, so thank you for the invite. I guess with my career, I haven't taken that very linear A to B path. When I left university, I was one of those people that didn't know what I was going to do. And so I took a management trainee position at an insurance company, and that allowed me to try a few different things. So I did some sales, and I did some claims, and I did some project management. And I discovered that I really loved the change side of that. I loved changing processes, changing ways of working. So I really lent into that, and I became a project manager full time. And then one day I was on my commute into London. I was on the train, and I was listening to the radio, and I heard that my company that was based in London was merging and moving to Manchester. So being pretty young, I was both equally terrified and excited, but I was like, I really want to be involved in that. What's that going to be like? That's going to be fun. And that was probably the first time I stepped out of my comfort zone, because I went and asked the sales director at the time, and in those days, very old-fashioned. There was a director's floor, plush carpets, a waiting area. So it was pretty intimidating. And I said, how do I get involved in a program like that? And he said, by doing this. And that was it. That was basically the start of my 20-plus consulting career, actually, in driving transformational change. It got me my first consulting role in PwC, which is a fantastic organization. And there the leaders gave me so much trust and exposure at such a young age. I didn't really appreciate it at the time. One of the partners gave me a role to manage a merger. And I thought of myself as a baby consultant. I was a baby consultant then. And it took me 15 years to thank him. It was the scariest, most important thing I ever did at that stage in my career. I learned so much about myself, and I really tested myself. And he was looking out for me in the wings. But it took me 15 years to thank him for that, because it was foundational for my career. And then, because I grew up in Hong Kong, I got very itchy feet to go and work back that side of the world. So I got transferred to Sydney. I lived there for 5 years. Again, if any of my team have said to me, I want to move countries, I really try to make that happen for them. It was such an important thing for me to do. I learned so much about myself, starting somewhere new, different culture, different ways of working. One of the best experiences I ever had. And personally, I met the love of my life there, who happened to be Irish. So that led me to Ireland, and I've been based in Ireland for the last 18 years. When I moved to Ireland, I moved to Accenture. And again, incredible team there, incredible organisation. When I first arrived, I thought, I'll probably do this for a couple of years and then I'll move on. I ended up having 16 wonderful years there, a variety of leadership roles, culminating in being asked to set up and build the digital team, as was in Accenture in Ireland. And again, that was an amazing experience. Learned so much about myself. I always talk about actually the first year of that journey as being probably the loneliest I've ever been as a leader, actually in my professional life, because I think when you're asked to sort of stand out in the front and go through a door without really knowing what's on the other side, it can feel incredibly lonely until you've built up that trust and credibility to have people come and join you to help build that. I was lucky. I had a fantastic team in digital to help me, and we were very successful, and it was a brilliant time. And I think when you get to 16 years somewhere, you're probably expected to stay, that you've made your choice. And I think most people in my consulting kind of network would probably do that. But I've always liked being a little bit uncomfortable. And I've always been driven by change, and I think that's changing yourself as well. So I just felt, I want to go and try something a little bit different. I want to go and test my skills, what I've learned, and learn other things in a different environment. I've always had my experience with large, mature businesses. And I thought, what would happen if I went to somewhere a little bit different, one that's actually growing, that's scaling. And when Qualtrics called me, I was really excited to take that call. And what I loved about my kind of first interactions with them is I wasn't having interviews, I was having conversations with very smart, dedicated, creative people. I really admired what they had done in building the business. I loved the area, which was experience management, and we can talk about that. Yep. What's that? A lot of my family asked me, what's that? And genuinely, the people and the way they work together, and the promise, the opportunity of what we could do to drive the business. I thought, yeah, that feels like that's going to be really interesting and exciting, and it has been. So I've been there for the last 2 years, and yeah, it's great.
Fantastic, and we're definitely going to come back to experience management and to Qualtrics, because I want to hear a lot more. But just before we do that, and you touched on it a little bit there about even taking the leadership role in Accenture and that difficult first year. Tell me a little bit about what leadership looks like to you and what you think a good leader is.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually think, there's that famous quote where it's like, not all superheroes wear capes. Well, I think not all great leaders have leadership titles. I think sometimes we look at leaders and they have to be heads of or chiefs of or, captains. And that's not what leadership is for me. If you have to enter a room and say what your job title is to get the respect and the credibility and get people to follow you, then that to me is not great leadership. So I've learned so much from people who have those titles and the people who don't, and how to navigate change, deal with adversity and ambiguity, create compelling visions that people will follow. I think for me, the most important aspect of leadership, though, is to develop the next generation of leaders. I don't see leadership as an end in itself. Me being a great leader isn't going to make me feel great, if you see what I mean. What actually gives me the most motivation and the most, as I'm looking back, as you're asking me to look back in my career, and I'm thinking, I've got people in my head. I've got the team. I've got how do you make a positive impact? And, I think it's incumbent on all of us as leaders to really pass that baton on, that the organization is in a more positive space than when you left it. That stewardship piece is really important. And I always think about kind of 4 key things for me. And I like things that all start with the same letter because it's easy for me. So for me, it's around courage, being brave about making decisions. You have to do things sometimes that goes against the flow. And sometimes you have to stand alone. So you need courage. Big fan of Brené Brown, who talks about, courage, and obviously that Roosevelt quote that everyone uses. But I would talk about that with my friends, especially if we have moments of self-doubt, which everybody does. I go, but we're in the arena. We're in the arena. So that's where it starts. So we should celebrate that. Curiosity, which is a massive thing for me. If you're not learning, if you're not adapting, if you're not feeling a little bit uncomfortable, I get bored. So that was my school report, gets distracted easily. So, I don't like to be bored. And I tried to learn a lot. And I found even my leadership styles adapted. So the leader I was in that first merger integration program is very different to where I am now. And even more recently, during COVID, I was like many people, I did my whole get fit thing. I was doing pretty well on that till I fell off my bike. And I spent, 3 weeks in hospital, a couple of surgeries. The team at Beaumont did a fantastic job putting me all back together again with sticky tape and glue. But when I came back to work, I knew that had impacted me. And I knew that I wasn't 100% straight away. You have to kind of, anyone who's had injury or surgery, you're never like, oh, yes, I'm 100% firing. And I was like, well, the old me would have just soldiered on. No one would have seen that. I would have tried to keep that away from everybody and just powered through. And I actually made a conscious decision that I was going to talk to my team and be very open and transparent about how I was feeling and what my energy levels were and what I could do and what I couldn't. And it was sort of typified to me by one of my team, great guy, came to me with, Vicky, you need to make this decision about something. And it was quite a significant decision. And I had that brain fog and fatigue, and he was talking to me, and I was like, I'm not in a good place to make this decision. This is not going to be a good decision. So I said to him, does this decision need to be made today, or can it be made tomorrow morning? I was always better in the mornings. And he said, no, it can wait tomorrow. I said, we're going to make it tomorrow morning because I'm going to make a better decision tomorrow morning. And, I remember thinking, I'm kind of putting that out there, I'm sort of admitting that I'm vulnerable here. And I got absolutely rewarded by that from the team. But 20 years ago, I would never have shown that vulnerability. So I hope I'm continuing to adapt my leadership style. I hope that makes me a better leader. We'll have to ask others about that.
That can be in the next series.
Yeah.
Well, I have to come back to, for those who don't know Qualtrics well, I suppose, to tell us a bit about Qualtrics globally, because, and its founding and how long it's been around, but also then Qualtrics in Europe and in Ireland.
Yeah. So Qualtrics was founded in 2002. It was a single product survey company that mainly, with customers that were mainly from academia and looking after research and helping academics with research. But it very quickly started to grow into this much larger multi-product company, whereby we now have nearly 20,000 customers globally of all sizes. We've 88% of the Fortune 100. And I think we were talking earlier, my day could be completely varied in terms of the type of customers and the sectors and the things that they look after. But essentially, what Qualtrics is all about is providing companies with the capability to really help them manage and improve their experiences. So I fundamentally believe that during my consulting career, you could probably come up with two themes, the two big challenges that customers, that organizations were trying to grapple with. One was relevancy. How do I stay relevant? How do I have that competitive advantage? How am I relevant? Whether it's relevant to customers or citizens, depending on what kind of organization. And then how do I deliver that relevancy in a way that is cost efficient or profitable? And what I love about Qualtrics is it sort of goes to the heart of both those challenges, because what we're trying to do is help our customers design and deliver exceptional experiences, but to do that in a way that's operationally agile. What I mean by that is, I don't know if you've walked through Dublin Airport recently, and it's great. So you go through security and you can press the buttons. You know the buttons?
Oh, yeah.
So you can press the smiley faces or the unsmiley faces. And that's brilliant because they're asking for your feedback, and feedback is a gift. But they're asking for your feedback at that particular time. So you probably had a great through security. You've gone, yeah, it's great. But that's not your airport experience. That's not the entirety of your airport experience. So that's only giving you a very small lens into what it feels like to operate through to walk through the airport and to shop through the airport, eat at the airport, and all those sort of things. What our products do is basically try to help organizations ask the right questions so that they can listen, understand, and then act on those. And the acting is really important to drive value. So it's looking at a much broader data set, much broader set of inputs. So call center conversations, social media, video feedback, Our recent CX trend said that only a third of customers give direct feedback. So you're only getting a third. And then when you do get a third, how narrow is that third? And we're all about try to get as much information as you can to make the most informed decisions so that you are adjusting your delivery of a service at the right time in the right way to the right people. That means you retain your relevancy because you're personalizing in the right way and you're delivering this amazing experience. But it also gives you the cost efficiency piece because you're doing it in a much more efficient way. You're doing it in an agile way. You're making those course corrections as you need to. And the same applies for when you're looking at employee experience, for example, as well. I loved a finding that came out of our EX trends this year. So we talked about, I know you've talked about the future of work for a long time, and it has changed dramatically. And one of the things is that 16-year career, probably more exception than norm going forward. People are moving around, they're doing more tours with different companies and organizations. So that first 3 months, 6 months of an employee's journey within your organization is super important around creating that advocacy and loyalty and creating that, real pull and anchor into a business, the amount of, investment people make to source talent. But when we asked, the respondents around, how do you prioritize onboarding, for example, only 41% of HR leaders said they prioritize feedback for onboarding, which I thought was really interesting.
It's low, wasn't it?
Yeah, because, wow, just think of all that rich insight you're missing out on for actually a really important, you've made that investment, these are great people, you want them in your business, you want them feeling so proud and energized as they come into your business, and yet you don't have enough data or signals to really tell you how you're doing with that process. So it's a very sort of small example, but just think if we could improve that, if we could help an organization have the right data to be able to course correct so that actually maybe your retention of talent is going to be higher. And that in itself is a great thing because you're retaining your talent and that's better for you culturally and organizationally. But it's also giving you a much better return on the investment you're making in sourcing and enabling that talent as well. So, yeah.
And when you're talking, the whole time in my head there, when you're talking about the kind of technology that you guys use to achieve that for your customers and for your team, you have to ask about AI, and is AI going to be transformative in your sector and what you guys do and in experience management?
Yeah, I think AI, we're all talking about it, and the organizations we work with and our ecosystem partners who are really important to us, I think they are thinking incredibly thoughtfully about this and about how it's used. I do think from an AI perspective, being responsible and thinking about the ethics and sustainability of AI and just technology development in general is key, that we have that transparency and safety and fairness built in. From an AI perspective, it's obviously key to our business. We've just released a new AI-powered suite of products very recently, which is fantastic, and we're continuing to accelerate our AI innovation. I think when you're looking at just even kind of basic use cases of how it can help, we don't see it replacing humans. We're not in the replace humans business, but we see it enhancing human connection, and actually that's really important. I've spoken before in the past how I think that when you deliver great customer experience, you have to talk about your employee experience at the same time. You can't do one without the other. I'm a firm believer of that. If your organizational culture isn't right, then the customer experience push becomes more of a project. It sort of fizzles out. Whereas what you want is it absolutely infused in your business. So you have to get the employee experience right as well. So that human connection is key for us, and something I feel very passionately about. And so when you look at things like how we can, give frontline employees, better data, better assistance to deliver a great experience, where we can give managers, team leaders, supervisors more information and maybe more suggestions, recommendations around coaching, around different actions they can take with their teams or with individuals. It's not replacing the decision making, which is, this is how I will decide to do this with my team, but it's giving them some help, some coaching, some assistance. And I know in previous episodes of this, I think Jane talked about assistance a lot as a theme,
indeed, yeah.
and I would absolutely agree with that. And I think that's where we need to bring data and humans together, and the technology and humans together. It's about enhancing, it's about enabling, it's about assisting. It's not about replacing, and I think that's where we very much see it.
Tell me a little bit more about Qualtrics as well. Again, for people who don't know, you've offices here in Dublin, but you're around Europe and the EMEA as well.
Yeah, so Dublin is our EMEA headquarters. We are super proud of that. We love that. We've been in Dublin since 2013, and we're right in the city centre of Dublin. And we love bringing our customers over to actually share in Ireland's great business community and great buzz, and just the talent here is amazing. But we also have offices around the region in Munich, in Paris, in Krakow, Amsterdam, Stockholm, London, Dubai, Madrid, Milan. I hope I'm not forgetting somebody.
Wow, okay.
So we have a big presence around the region. We are believers, again, go back to that connection, that we need to meet our customers where they are. But we also have a lot of investment in, for example, our engineering teams in Dublin and Krakow. And we've just recently opened a services hub in Krakow as well, so we're really excited about that.
Wow, that's quite a presence in Europe. I don't think I realised how wide that was. We do this series in partnership with the IDA, so I'm going to ask you the question, your own experience with the support from the IDA, and I don't just mean, getting you into Ireland, I mean, now that you're here and, support around everything from, digital transformation to talent to whatever it might be. Yeah,
for me, I'll just take my Qualtrics hat off for a minute, and just a person who's been working and living in Ireland for 18 years, I think the IDA is an incredible team and organisation, and I can see just the impact that it makes for business and for the country as a whole. But from a Qualtrics perspective, the IDA has been really supportive as we have arrived in Ireland and then really decided this is the place we're gonna stay and we're gonna grow. And I think giving us advice, giving us support, giving us that networking connections from a business community perspective, they've been incredibly helpful. So really important to us, yes.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. And I suppose I have to ask you as well, and we've touched on it a little bit with things like AI, but if you were to look to the future, or even the near future and the further away, if you were to pick some trends that you're seeing in the sector as a whole, and maybe in your own your own area of customer success.
Yeah, I think trends as a whole, I think we still haven't quite got the return to work, the working model. I don't think that's settled or landed. I think obviously as we saw, as everyone came out of the pandemic, there was a lot of focus on people moving, a lot of people in their new jobs. I think that's settled a little bit, but I don't think the mode of working is settled. I think organisations, large and small, are still trying to work that out. And I think our expectations as working people have changed, and we as individuals haven't necessarily landed on the thing that works for us, as found that mode and that rhythm. So I think that's one for me that still has some road to run, and that's where I go back and understanding the signals and getting the insights around what's happening there, I think is really important. I think for customer success as a business, actually, and there are in Dublin and in Ireland in particular, we have so many great customer success professionals and leaders across different sectors, really great talent here. And I think a big thing is actually, especially if I think about how Qualtrics has grown up, the technology has become a lot more, in terms of integrated into transformation programs, moving from a sort of discrete piece into very much the heart of what's happening with the organization. And I think that requires customer success people to really double down on understanding what are the strategic goals, what's the value to be created for the organizations, really understand the context of the organization, because it's much more about having a lifetime relationship with those organizations, because as our technology develops, for example, and other technology develops, you really are trying to stay at the front of what your customers need, but you need to then really understand what they need and where they're trying to get to. So I think it becomes much more exciting, actually, in terms of just how important that relationship with that organization between customer success and the customers, whether it's with Qualtrics or any other organization. I think that relationship is really, really important. So I think that's going to be something we're going to see. I think people maybe sometimes have looked at customer success as, oh yeah, that's services. I actually think people are already realizing the importance of that. I think we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I do think often expectations are a lot higher than they were, and in a funny way, the sophistication of the technology has even added to that and made people expect you to know about them almost. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think if you are a company that's driven by feedback being the most important thing, and insights and data, then yeah, you better make sure that you have got your feedback, and you've got your insights, and that you properly understand the situation. But I do think, I think about the conversations I have with our customers. The great thing is that I've seen the maturity of experience management over the years when I was in consulting, and now that I'm with Qualtrics. And our customers have gone on the same journey that we have done in Qualtrics, which is it started off as quite a more simple type of feedback mechanism, annual employee surveys, the buttons. And now, as you say, much more sophisticated. The power of it is so much greater. The value you can generate is so much higher. And we're going on that journey with our customers, which is great, and our partners, which is great. So, really exciting.
Fantastic. There's about a million other things I could ask you, but our time is definitely up. That was fascinating. Thanks so much, and I hope our listeners know a lot more about Qualtrics and about yourself. Thanks so much, Vicky, for doing that.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.